Palo Alto, 2017. It's a sunny afternoon in Palo Alto. I, Henry, finally finished a heavy day's work, stepped out of the bright and spacious office building in the Silicon Valley campus, and walked slowly to the parking lot. As far as I could see, the setting sun gilded everything around me with a layer of gold. The rolling palm trees swayed in the breeze, and everything looked so peaceful and beautiful. However, I felt a slight uneasiness in my heart. Walking quickly to my car, I couldn't wait to get home to Sophia. Since the expansion of the company, I often work late into the night. Every time I came home, my wife Sophia was already asleep, so I could only gently get into bed and secretly gaze at her quiet face in her sleep. Suddenly, I realized that it had been a long time since I had gazed at her quietly. As I started the car and drove away from the park, my thoughts drifted back to the past. I've been married to Sophia for 8 years now, and it seems that the passion I felt at the beginning has been smoothed out by the years and the trivialities of life. The once sweet words of love, romantic dates, I do not know when, has become a hurried glance, a few perfunctory greetings. The car drove into the familiar neighborhood avenue, through the rows of neatly arranged single-family houses. This is a typical American middle-class neighborhood. Every family lives a routine life. How could we be any different? Every day, we go out early and come back late, and get together less and leave more. It's as if our lives have lost their intersection without us even realizing it. I finally arrived home. Pushing open the door, I was surprised to find the living room brightly lit, with Sophia leaning back on the sofa in her nightgown, staring intently at the TV. When she heard the sound of movement, she looked back and noticed the tiredness on my face. "You're back. You are back. Why are you so late today?" There was a hint of fatigue in her voice. "Yeah, the project is a bit of a rush." I scrutinized Sophia's complexion, trying to find the old luster in her eyes, but found that love seemed to be covered by an inexplicable haze. This kind of eyes, I déjà vu, but I cannot say what is wrong. It was late at night, and we fell into a deep sleep, embracing each other as we always do. But tonight I had a disturbing dream. In the dream, Sophia and I were strangers, unaware of each other's lives. When I woke up, I broke out in a cold sweat, but Sophia slept deeply, with an elusive smile on her lips. I began to wonder if our real life had also cracked. In the next few days, my life was obviously a little distracted. I made a lot of mistakes at work, and even my good friend Michael, a senior executive in the marketing department of the company who has a lot of interaction with Sophia at work, started to ask me if I was experiencing any problems. "Henry, has something gone wrong between you and Sophia lately?" Michael asked thoughtfully. "She hasn't been working right lately either. Are you guys?" I quickly interrupted him and said it was nothing. But Michael's words made me feel uneasy. I began to pay close attention to my wife's unusual behavior and gradually discovered something very unusual. At a company party, I overheard Sophia and her boss Michael whispering in the corner. They were a little too close, and there was a strange understanding between them. As my inner turmoil grew, I decided to find out what was going on. So, I began to frequent overtime on the grounds of late return, but secretly tracking his wife Sophia. Finally, in a sunny afternoon, I witnessed a scene that broke my heart. His wife and Michael went into a hotel, eye to eye, talking and laughing. All the clues pointed to a reality I didn't want to face. Sitting in the car, looking at the closed door of the hotel, I felt a heavenly rotation. The sweet memories of the past, like a flashlight in the mind, a scene, have become a mockery. I didn't want to believe that my beloved wife would do such a thing. How can I face all this? What should I do about my marriage, my family, and myself? The dusk sunlight through the car window sprinkled on my face. An unprecedented helplessness enveloped my heart. At this moment, I realized that, under the seemingly calm surface of life, the dark current is surging and will soon set off huge waves. I couldn't help but shiver, for myself and for this precarious marriage. The sun is setting, and the sky is covered with dark clouds. A storm is approaching. For the next few days, I lived in torment. I didn't want to face, but had to accept the reality that my beloved wife Sophia was cheating on me with my boss Michael. I tried to convince myself that it was just a misunderstanding, but the signs were relentless in proclaiming the unbearable truth. I remember, it was a dark and windy night. The company organized a grand social reception. I saw Sophia in the crowd, dressed in a floor-length evening gown, glittering in the light. She was elegantly holding a glass of wine and laughing with the people around her. I, on the other hand, could only stand in the corner, savoring the endless bitterness alone. I don't know how long it took, but Michael also appeared at the reception. Young and handsome, he easily caught the eye of the ladies. I watched coldly as he walked right up to Sophia, and they were soon chatting away. They were so close that it was as if nothing else existed around them. I was staring at them with a deadly intensity, wanting to go and tear off their masks. Halfway through the party, Sophia and Michael somehow disappeared into the crowd. I searched high and low, but couldn't find them. Just when I was about to despair, I caught a glimpse of them kissing on a secluded terrace. At that moment, I felt so angry that I wanted to go to Michael and teach him a lesson. But reason told me that this was a corporate setting and I couldn't lose control. After the party, I drove home, holding back my anger. Sophia seemed to recognize the difference and asked me what was wrong. I didn't answer, just grimaced and gripped the steering wheel tightly. When I got home, I couldn't control myself and asked Sophia about her relationship with Michael. She looked puzzled at first, but then she became furious and claimed I was full of shit. We argued, one with the other, neither of us letting the other go. I denounced what she was doing was desecrating our marriage, and she sneered and asked me what I had done for the family all these years. I was about to retort, but I couldn't say anything, because what she said is the truth. Yes, I am busy for the cause, but ignored the feelings of his wife. Marriage, feelings if not carefully cared for, will wither and fade. The sound of the argument woke up the sleeping child, who was crying in his crib. I looked back and suddenly felt exhausted. It was ironic that I had to go through this in my middle age. My pride made me unwilling to shed tears in front of my wife, so I simply grabbed the door and wandered the streets alone until late at night. The next morning, I went to work with 2 huge dark circles under my eyes. My coworkers asked me if I was not feeling well, but I could only answer in a perfunctory manner. I was always distracted by the images of Sophia and Michael at work. Yes, I had to catch her in the act and force her to confess to this shameful relationship. I took a day off work and started to follow Sophia, knowing her schedule, which included a couple of property showings in the morning and lunch with Michael in the afternoon. I went to the real estate agency where Sophia worked and watched from afar as she went in and out of the office, taking care of her clients. A couple of hours passed before she finally got in her car and left the office. I knew she was on her way to Michael's appointment. I followed her for more than 20 minutes and finally saw them walk into a hidden French restaurant. I waited outside the store for almost 2 hours, holding back my mixed emotions. Lunchtime had already passed, but they didn't come out. I wondered if they had gotten a room. I walked towards the restaurant, but was stopped by the waiter, who told me that I had to make a reservation to get in. I pushed him away impatiently and marched into the restaurant. After looking around, I finally saw Sophia and Michael in the corner. They were close, head to head, discussing something, or more appropriately, flirting. Or more appropriately, they were flirting, with Sophia giggling and looking up at Michael, who was not shy about staring at Sophia with his affectionate eyes, full of love and tenderness. I couldn't stand it any longer and walked towards them with great strides. Both of them were shocked to see me and looked at each other. When I asked them what this was all about, Sophia stammered and couldn't make sense of it. Michael responded first, saying we were just talking about work. What's wrong with that? I laughed coldly and said, "Do you need to be so eye-catching and cuddly to talk about work? Do you think I am blind?" Michael was speechless, but Sophia stood up suddenly. She tensed her face and said, "Henry, I've had enough. I've had enough of this life. Our marriage has long existed in name only. I need freshness. I need excitement. I need to be cared for, to be loved, and all of these. Exactly you cannot give me. Yes, I am in love with Michael. We are in love. I don't want to argue with you, but I don't want to. Maybe it's time for us to call it quits." I looked at her in a daze, not knowing what to say. "In the morning," I said dejectedly, "So, this is your choice? You're such a heartless woman. You swore that you would never part, and then you fell into the arms of another man." I was wrong about you, Sophia. We're done. We're done. I blurted out a series of hurtful words and tears came to my eyes. Sophia was also in tears and I knew that we were both hurt to the core. I took one last look at Michael, who was standing at a loss. Maybe he didn't think it would come to this. Maybe he didn't realize it would come to this. But Sophia was right. It's over between us. I left the restaurant without looking back, leaving the mess behind me. As soon as I walked out the door, I felt a great emptiness, as if my life had lost all its colors. I didn't know where to go, so I wandered the streets with nothing to do. I gave Jane a call to complain to her, and she sounded very worried about me and said she would come immediately to have a drink with me, but I said forget it. I was afraid that if I told anyone about this, I would lose my last bit of face. When I returned home, Sophia was nowhere to be found. I sat on the sofa. My mind was blank. The past flashed in my mind, and the sweetness of the past now seemed so ridiculous and unreal. I don't understand. Why did things turn out this way? Was I not good enough? I thought I had done everything I could for Sophia over the years, but why did she hurt me so much? Is this the end of our marriage? My life seemed to be plunged into a dark quagmire. I began to take frequent vacations, and I was too lethargic to work. Even my boss, who had always been strict, began to look at me with pity. I hated this feeling, and I hated that I couldn't do anything about it. I want to salvage, but do not know how to salvage. Maybe, between us, really cannot go back. Sophia has always held an irreplaceable place in my heart. However, she chose to leave when I needed her the most. Sometime after the argument, Sophia moved out of our house and went to live in Michael's apartment. I tried to convince myself that maybe it was just temporary, that maybe she would come around one day. But reality hit me hard. I soon learned from mutual friends that Sophia and Michael were very close to each other and seemed to be adjusting to living together very quickly. I couldn't accept this fact and drank all day long to drown my sorrows. My friend Jane saw it in her eyes, anxious in her heart, and repeatedly advised me to get out of the haze and get back on my feet. But I gave up on myself and ignored her concern. I was like a walking corpse, working and living mechanically, but my heart was already full of holes. After a while, I was at home late one night, drinking away my sorrows, when I received an unexpected call. It turned out to be Sophia's sister Lily. She severely reprimanded me, saying that I had neglected Sophia over the years, which had led to today's situation. At the same time, she also expressed strong dissatisfaction with her sister Sophia's behavior, that she is too selfish, for the sake of a moment of freshness, left the family and children. Lily advised me to get up the spirit, work hard, with practical action to win back Sophia's heart. Lily's words gave me a glimmer of hope that I hadn't had in a long time. I suddenly realized that perhaps it was not all hopeless. So I began to actively engage in my work, with a view to proving myself with excellent performance. I also redecorated my house and gave it a new look. I learned how to cook simple home-cooked meals and imagined how surprised Sophia would be when she came home to a nice dinner. But once again, life made me despair. After some time, I learned that Sophia and Michael were having more and more problems, and that Michael's philandering nature had finally been exposed, and it was an open secret that he was having an affair. Sophia, on the other hand, has gradually become more and more hesitant and indecisive. I thought that this might be the beginning of the end, that she might realize Michael's true nature and come back to me. It didn't work out that way. One day, Lily came to see me out of the blue with a serious look on her face. It turned out that Sophia had finally fallen out with Michael and had packed her bags and left him in a fit of rage. I was so happy to hear that. I was about to say something, but Lily stopped me. She reluctantly told me that although Sophia broke up with Michael, she had no intention of returning to me. She chose to rent an apartment and start a new life. I had mixed feelings and didn't know whether to be happy or sad. I don't understand why Sophia would rather be alone than come back to this family. Am I already worthless in her heart? I questioned Lily, but she sighed. She said, after this trauma, Sophia seems to have lost her confidence in love and marriage. She needed time to calm down, to reflect, and to heal. As a husband, all I can do is to give her freedom and time. I muttered, give her freedom? Give her time? God knows how long I've waited for her, how much I've done for her. And now you want me to watch our marriage fall apart and do nothing?" Lily didn't give me a straight answer, but said meaningfully, "Believe me, all of this is hitting Sophia no harder than it is you. She is also experiencing great pain and struggle. As a veteran, I can only say, if your relationship still has a ray of hope, then give each other a little more time and space. If it is destined to be irretrievable, then please let go and don't let this relationship become a burden to each other," she said. She left sadly. I sat for a long time, thinking a lot. Outside the window, the wind and rain began to rise. The rain hit the glass, making a dull sound. Pale darkness enveloped the whole city, just like my mood at this moment. Is my marriage coming to an end in such a precarious way? Life is sometimes so ironic. Former vows now seems to be so unbearable. Once thought that we'll grow old together, but in the middle of the confused departure. The sanctity of marriage has collapsed in the face of reality. I do not know. Sophia and I still have no possibility of getting back together. I also do not know. All this pain, how long will it last? But life goes on. When I finally looked up from my great sadness, I realized that my life was already in shambles. At work, my frequent vacations and negative attitude caused dissatisfaction among my superiors. The important project I was working on was mercilessly passed on to someone else. After several warnings, I finally realized that if I continued like this, I would lose my job. Luckily, my friend Jane has been watching over me. When I was most depressed, she encouraged me, comforted me, and even forced me to go out for a walk. Gradually, under the care of my friends and the pressure of life, I finally pulled myself together. I began to devote myself to work in order to prove myself again in my career. At the same time, my mother also noticed something strange about me. At a dinner, she politely mentioned Sophia and advised me not to be discouraged, but to learn to let go and start over. I knew that my mother was concerned about me in her own way. Although she had not been happy with Sophia, she chose to stand by me at this time. My mother's support gave me a warm feeling that I hadn't felt for a long time. Perhaps it was a blessing in disguise. After months of hard work, my job finally turned around. A project I led was highly recognized by the client, and the company won a big order. My boss was so impressed that he not only resumed my project, but also promoted me to department head. Colleagues congratulated me, but I just felt confused. I used to think that success in my career could fill the emptiness in my heart, but now I realize that it was just self-deception. Without Sophia, everything seems so pale and powerless. To my surprise, while my career was rebounding, there seemed to be a subtle change on Sophia's side, who Lily told me had moved out of her rented apartment and found a new job. She started attending parties more frequently and seemed to be trying hard to enrich herself. I couldn't help but wonder if she was going through some kind of transformation. Had she finally come to her senses and started a new life? My suspicions were soon confirmed. By chance, I met Sophia again at a cocktail party, and she seemed to be at a loss for words as she didn't expect to see me here. We exchanged pleasantries, but the atmosphere was a bit awkward. I noticed that she was no longer as glamorous as before, but more calm and collected. We just stared at each other in silence, unspoken understanding of the sadness in each other's eyes. After the reception, Sophia reached out to me. She said that she had been reflecting on this time and felt that she owed me a lot. She apologized for hurting me and felt ashamed for failing the family. She said she finally realized that her marriage was only built on passion, and when the passion subsided, only chicken feathers were left behind. She shouldn't have been so easily seduced, and she shouldn't have left me and my children so heartlessly. Sophia said that this time away gave her a chance to re-examine her life. She began to think about what is the best way to live. She began to think, what is the meaning of marriage? What did she really want? I listened in silence, with mixed feelings. I was glad that she had come to her senses, but I couldn't completely forgive her for what she had done. The damage had been done, and even if she regretted it today, she could not undo the time and trust that had passed. I asked her with a bitter smile, "What about now? What does she want?" Sophia stared at me with mixed emotions in her eyes. She said she knew that the damage was done and that what was missed could not be undone. But she wanted a chance to make amends, even if it was just as a friend, and to reconnect with me and my children. She said she didn't expect me to forgive her, but just wanted to give each other a new start. I was silent for a long time, but finally nodded. I said, I don't know if it's still possible for us, but I'm willing to try to let go and give each other a chance to start over. Not as lovers, but as friends, as parents. We're not young anymore. We've been through too much suffering and struggle. Maybe it's time to let go. Sophia smiles with a sense of relief, but with a bitterness in her smile. I know, we both know, those good old days are gone. The hurt we felt is a scar that can never be erased. But perhaps from now on, we can learn to use a new way to get along. No longer to calculate, no longer resentment, but with thanksgiving and blessing, each other complete. When we parted, we gave each other a gentle hug. At that moment, I realized that grief can also be a kind of salvation. After experiencing a life of suffering, one may know how to cherish the present moment and understand the little things in the ordinary life. I looked at Sophia's back, inexplicably relieved. Perhaps put down as a new beginning. Perhaps we should learn, with gratitude, embrace a new life. Outside the window, the rain has cleared. The sun is shining through the clouds. I know that once very familiar figure will eventually fade out of my life. But I no longer feel lost, because I understand that we will eventually take this bitter memories, continue their own life journey. And those sufferings, those struggles, will eventually light up the road ahead, leading us to a new future. The reunion with Sophia gave me a sense of relief that I hadn't felt in a long time. Though we both knew that it was impossible for us to relive the good old days, it was a relief to face each other honestly and to express our deepest apologies and gratitude. From her eyes, I read the same sadness and realization. We all lost in this emotional game, but also learned tolerance and calm. The weekend after the reception, I invited Sophia to my home. We sat on the patio and talked about the years. I talked about my work, the pressures and challenges of my newly promoted position. She talked about her life after leaving Michael, the isolation of carrying everything on her own. We bared our souls and talked about our deepest vulnerabilities and uncertainties. Henry, I've never been more sorry than I am right now, Sophia said, her eyes reddening. I realized that I didn't understand the true meaning of marriage. I thought love was about passion and never getting tired of it, but I didn't realize that blandness can be romantic. All these years, I have neglected your feelings and forgotten our original heart. I'm sorry I failed you and our family. I reached out and gently took her hand. Sophia, you don't need to apologize. I'm at fault too. I put all my thoughts on my career and forgot to take care of your feelings. Marriage is never about one person. It takes two to make it work. It's because we have forgotten the original purpose of loving each other that our marriage has come to this point. We held hands in silence, and the moments when we were in love came back to us. Those once happy moments now seem so distant and unreal. It turns out that the good things that we take for granted are the most fragile and precious ones. If I could turn back time, I'd change a lot of things. Sophia murmured, but it's too late for that. We missed each other and hurt the one we love the most. Maybe I'll never forgive myself in my life. Don't say that. I reassured, life goes on. Maybe we're still young enough to make up for our mistakes. Although we are no longer husband and wife, we are still friends and parents to our children. From now on, we have to learn to love each other in a new way. Not to possess, but to fulfill. Sophia broke down into tears and held my hand tightly. Thank you, Henry, for giving us a chance to start over. I swear, from now on, I'll make amends with my actions, be a good mother and a trustworthy friend. We held each other tightly, feeling each other's body heat. All the dust has settled, but let a person feel relieved. Once thought that losing each other, life is no longer complete. Now realize that the real love, know how to let go, know how to bless. The sun was sinking and the light on the terrace became softer. We decided to take advantage of this hard-won reunion to talk about each other's recent situation and our visions for the future. At this moment, the old grudges didn't seem to matter anymore. What mattered was that we could finally face each other honestly and let those long pin-up emotions be released. Talking about her feelings, Sophia's eyes suddenly reddened. I'm sorry, I failed this family. She choked. She choked up, I really don't know what happened to me at that time. How could I be fooled by Michael's sweet words and do something so irresponsible? I put my hand gently on her shoulder and gave her a relieved smile. I can understand that. Maybe everyone gets lost at some point. What's important is that you finally figured it out, chose to turn back, and chose to take responsibility. That takes a lot of courage. You really don't blame me? I chose to leave when you needed me the most? Sophia choked. Of course I blamed you. I hated you. I even thought about getting back at you. I confessed. But I've come to realize that resentment doesn't solve anything. It traps you in pain. Now that we have lost each other, I hope that we can at least keep the last respect and blessing. Sophia sobbed uncontrollably and held my hand tightly. You're really nice, Henry. I didn't know how to cherish you. Now I finally realize that you are the one who loves and understands me the most. Unfortunately, we can't go back. Shoo, stop it. I pressed my finger gently on her lips to stop her tears. Now that we both understand this, let's move on. From now on, we have to learn to love each other and this family in a whole new way. Not to possess, but to fulfill. We hugged each other tightly, tears mingling. Everything had finally come to an end, and a new chapter would begin for us. Time flies, and the years go by like a shuttle. A few years later, one weekend, I was wandering alone in the mall, suddenly glimpsed a familiar figure. She seemed to have seen me too, and after a slight stare, she revealed a faint smile. After a moment's hesitation, I walked up and said hello. After exchanging pleasantries, we sat down at a cafe and talked about our lives over the years. Sophia told me that she now lives independently and occasionally visits her children. She is no longer obsessed with career success, but spends more time on herself, studying, traveling, and exploring the many possibilities of life. I can see that she has become more mature and open-minded after all these storms. I, too, have been recovering from the trauma of my marriage over the years. I started to try a new life and rekindled my passion for work. In my spare time, I read books, work out, participate in social activities, and try to enrich myself. Although I occasionally feel lonely, I realize that real happiness needs to be fought for by myself. We talked about the year, talked about the past that is engraved in our hearts. Looking back, everything is like a dream, so unreal, but so deep. We lamented, people's lives always inevitably experience some ups and downs. But it is these ups and downs that make life so colorful. Henry, all these years of experience are actually gifts from life, aren't they? Sophia smiled and said, it taught us that happiness is not something to be taken for granted, but something to be taken care of. You're right. I nodded thoughtfully. Life is a long way off, and we're all learning and growing. The past doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that we embrace our new life with gratitude and realization. Outside the window, the rain was drizzling. I looked at the rain. My thoughts drifted far, far away. Yes, this emotional storm, although almost destroyed us, but also let us reborn. Without the haste of yesterday, we can finally face our hearts openly and listen to our true voice. When we parted, we hugged each other tightly and gave each other the most sincere blessing. Along the way, we have changed from lovers to friends, but those deep memories will always be engraved in our hearts. Thank God, so that we have this heartfelt feelings. It is with these beautiful and sad. Life is so complete. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.